This is Jason with devslopes.com, and in this video we're going to build the second section of our skate website, and it's this guy right down here. Alright, so I told you that we're going to be building sections with different backgrounds. We've got the lighter one, now we're going to create a darker one, and let's dive in just under the hood a little bit so you can see how the grid system gets a little bit more complex here. Alright, so let's come to our top section here, which is going to be section dark. So we've got a brand new section here we're working with. You can see as it highlights, we've got this row that spans the entire width, and then inside of that row we've got this skateboard image in here, which you can see is kind of hugged over to the right. You can see that there's a class called offset medium 2. So this is, we're going to be working with offsets just a little bit here with columns, so you're going to be learning about that. And then you can see that I've got my image nested into that. And then you can see that we've got this column width of 6 here in the center. And inside of this, we've got a row and a second row. So you can see that we've actually got two different rows inside of a column here, which is pretty cool. So we're going to be nesting rows and columns inside of columns, which is going to be great. And then inside of this row that's within this top column here, we actually have two other additional columns. We have this one and then this one. So we're nesting pretty deep with our columns and rows. And then right down here at the bottom, we've just got a simple row with a column and a button in the center of it. So pretty cool stuff. Let's go ahead and dive in and start building this. Alright, so right over here in brackets, let's come down to the bottom. I'm going to just tab in and make a note. I'm going to call this section 2. Alright, just kind of help keep these sections separated here. And then let's go ahead and create a div class and give it a name of section dark. So what this is doing here for us is just like in the section above, we did section light, gave us this light class. Now we're going to be able to build a second class to wrap this other section to add a dark background to it. So now that we've created the section, let's go ahead and create that first row and then that we had, and then inside of this we're going to create our first column. Alright, so let's, before we complete this class here, go ahead and close that off, and let's think about again what we were doing here. So I told you we're working a little bit with offsets. Alright, so inside of our row we're going to create a new column, and you can see that it's going to have a column width of 1 on medium screens with an offset of medium 2, and then when it's the small state, small viewport, it's going to take up the full column width of 12. Let me show you how we're going to do that. So in this first one, we're going to write a column small 12, and then a column medium 1 with an, let's see, 1 with a offset medium 2. And let me tell you exactly what's happening here. And I'm going to bring up that web page again to show you. So what we're essentially saying here is we've actually got a total column width of 3. Alright, so in this first column width of 1 is actually where the skateboard is. You can see that it's highlighting with the blue and the green. Alright, so the skateboard image is actually in this column width of 1. And then when we add an offset of 2, what we're saying is add an empty space of 2 columns wide to the left of this. So we could have done a column width of 4, a column width or an offset of 4 or 5, and it would keep our column width of 1, but then it's going to push this over as many columns as we want to offset it. So remember, when you're working with offsets, it's going to be adding space to the left side of the column that you want to work with. Alright, and then we've got this column width of 6, which we're putting additional content in, and then we've got this other column just right over here to the right, just the column class, that is going to take up any extra space evenly. So we've said over here, essentially we have a column width of 3, right? A medium of 1 and an offset of 2, so that's 3. And then we've got a center column of 6, and this last column over here on the right is filling up the rest of the width available, which is actually 3 columns. All right, so cool. Now that we kind of understand that, let's go ahead and add some content in this left column here. All right, so we've opened this up, and what we're going to be doing is adding an image. All right, and then we're going to give it a source, assets, and then this one is going to be the Prodigy PNG. All right, and you can go ahead and close that off. And let's also add a class to this. All right, because we want that image fluid working for us. All right, so now we have our first image here, and I've gone ahead and I've resized this image to work more appropriately for us on this web page. So let's come back to our project. I'm going to go ahead and refresh that and check that out. We've got our skateboard. Now, I'm going to zoom up on this. What's really cool about this skateboard here is this is actually a skate company that I had several years ago back in 2006, Prodigy Skateboard. So yes, I'm a very passionate skateboarder, and I love the whole web development stuff as well. So this is one of my actual boards, so feel privileged that we're working with this image. All right, so let's go ahead and get this back to 100%. So we've got this section dark here. Let's go ahead and use that class and add some styling to it. So inside of our brackets here, come over into your CSS, and we're going to add the section dark. All right, it's the same class that we've added to this wrapper for the second section of ours. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and add a background color of a very light gray, and then close that off, and then we're going to do the same thing and add a padding of 2. And then, you know what? Thinking about this, I want this to be rem. All right, so go ahead and add an R to both of those. That just helps it more on a mobile compatibility scale there. So go ahead and make sure both of those are saved. Let's come back over here. Now we have this nice dark section. So pretty easy, right? So we've got technically a column width of 3 because we've got a column width of 1 where our skateboard is, and then we've offset it 2 columns to the left with that offset class that we used. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and add the center content here. So we're going to come into our, where did it go here? It looks like we have to create the second class here. So come into here, and then we're going to add a div tag with a class of column. Well, let's do this one a small first because we always want it to take up 12 columns in a small viewport. And then we're going to do on the medium viewports, we're just going to give it a column width of 6, and then open that up. And then right below it, why don't we just go ahead and close that up with that regular column class. All right, so cool. So now inside of this row, or inside of this column here, we're going to add some text content. All right, so with the text, we knew that we had 2 rows with it, one stacked upon the other. So let's go ahead and inside this row, we're going to create a div class row, and then within this, we're going to create a column. Now let's think about this. We're working with a column width of 6, right? But inside of this, we want our column to expand the entire width of the column of 6. And to do that, we're actually going to add a div class of column medium, or actually we can just add this small 12. So does that make sense? So what we're saying here is in this center column, I want the text to actually take up the full grid system, the full column width of 12. When you add a new row inside of a column, you're essentially resetting the grid system and have a full set of 12 to work with. All right. So inside of here, let's go ahead and add a paragraph tag. Okay. And then we can actually just leave that closed up like this. And then let's head over to our browser and grab some dummy text, some lorem ipsum. Okay, and we can just type in lorem ipsum, not meeting. Let's just get a generator or something. There we go. All right, and I usually just go to the first result here. This is fine here. And then we're just going to copy and paste. They got an example down here. This is great. Just grab this right here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And then inside of these paragraph tags, I'm going to paste the first one there. So that's it for the first row, right? Pretty simple. We've got text that goes across the entire column here. So make sure outside of our row here, now we want to go ahead and create another row. So we're going to do a div class row and open that up, and then we're going to create columns within a row. And in this one, remember, there's 2 columns. All right, so let's actually, before we create this column, come back over to our example here and then inspect this element. So we've got the column width of 6, right? And then we've got the second row. Let's see, let's find out where we are. We're in here. And then we're in this section 2, and we're in the second row now. So we've got a column width of 9 and then a column width of 3. And we're not using any offsets here. We're just going to slap our text in this column width of 9, and then we're going to put our image in this column width of 3. All right, so go ahead and right in here, we're going to create a div class of col small 12, and then a column medium of 9. All right, and we can open that up, and this is where our text is going to go, so we can create another paragraph tag there, and then outside of this column, go ahead and create your second div tag to complete the rest of the width of the grid system here. And we're going to do a column of 12 for small viewports, and then on the medium we're just going to fill up the full width of 12, so 9 plus 3 is 12, and then you can go ahead and close that off, and then inside here is where we'll put that image. Okay, and we'll just leave this empty for a moment. Alright, so go ahead and copy this lorem ipsum text here, and then in this second row go ahead and paste that. And then in this class here we've got the image, and then let's be sure to add the class to this because we want to add our image fluid so that this image can scale appropriately as our viewport changes. Alright, and then in this one, let's go ahead and grab the assets folder, and we are going to use KFS, which is Kickflip Studios, one of DevSlope's new gaming companies. So pretty cool stuff. Now let's check this out and see how it's all looking so far. So let's come back over here, let's refresh this, and we've got a couple of things that we've got to do to get this stuff to align with our row right here. Alright, so come back over to brackets, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do no split, and just so I can get a better look of the HTML here, and let's see why this content isn't all aligning in a row, because we've got our dark section and we have one giant row that goes across the board, and we need to make sure our content's in there. So we've got this section dark, which is great, and then we're the row right here, we've already found it. This row is supposed to encompass all of the content in here. So this div tag, as we were typing this out, actually got in the wrong spot. So let's see where our section dark one was, right here on line 113. So let's go ahead and cut this div tag, and then we can actually put this after this line here, and then let me straighten this out. Alright, now let's take a look how this goes here. So we've got our section dark, and then there we go. So now this row encompasses all of our content, and then we should have our column here with the image. So a column of 3, which is great, and then our column of 6, which is fantastic. Yep, and then we've got the column on the side to take up the rest of the space. Okay, so go ahead and save that, And let's try this again. Haha, there we go. Much better. So be careful with those div tags, those closing div tags. They can be tricky sometimes. Somehow we got an extra div tag in there, and it totally cut off our row very prematurely right after our image here, instead of keeping all of the content added together. So very cool. We've added our text and our images. Now the last thing we need to do is just create one more row right here at the bottom, and then we'll add our button. All right, so right underneath we've got the column here, and this is the first row. So we want to add this button row right underneath this row so that it can stack underneath. We're going to add a div class row, and then in here we're just going to add a div class column small 12. All right, this button's just going to be slapped in the middle of this full width column here. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this button in a wrapper. And what I mean by that, let me show you here. Let me close out of this. Is I want to put a wrapper element around the button so that I can add like margin and space to this button to push it away from these other elements on the page. And to do that, we can simply create a div tag with the class. Let's call this cool stuff wrapper. And then inside of here, we can actually now go ahead and throw our button on here. So we can do a button and add a type of button. Okay, and then remember, Bootstrap has its own button classes. So BTN is going to give us the default classes like the rounded corners and the padding inside of the button, the text from the edge of the button. And then remember, we had the BTN large, which gave us the bigger button. All right, and then now we want to style the button on our own, and so we're going to add our own class. I'm going to add a class called cool stuff BTN. All right, and we're going to leave it at that for now. Well, let's just add get cool stuff. All right, cool. So I'm saying cool a lot. Let's check this out. Go ahead and refresh that. So we've got a button here, and we know that we want it centered. It looks like we need to add some space from the top because it's going to run into this stuff, and we just want to change the color and the font. So let's come back over to brackets, and I am going to do my vertical split view again and get my CSS over here. And let's just start from the top. Let me scroll down here, and we're going to grab this class here, this wrapper. All right, so in this wrapper, what we want it to do is add some space between the top of the button and the bottom of the row above it. So we can actually just do that with a margin. Actually, we're going to be adding a margin top, and I don't know, let's try 20 pixels. Okay. And we'll come back here and refresh it, and you can see that it added a good amount of space here. That's fine. I like that. Let's add some color and get it centered to make sure it looks good. All right, so now let's grab our cool stuff BTN. Go ahead and copy that and get the class. And let's be a little bit specific with this one. We're going to say any class of cool stuff BTN that is a child of button. This is the styling we want to add. And I want the background color. We'll just make it red. Okay, and then we want the font to be white. So add we'll use a hex code this time for fun. Add a font color of white. And we want this button to be centered, right? So to do that, why don't we go ahead and add a display of blocks so we can now move our element around, our button element, and then use that magic of margin auto. All right, let's see what kind of magic is happening here. Oh my gosh, I love it. So we've got it. We've got our image here. We've got two rows nested inside of a column. with another 2 columns nested inside of the second row, and then we've stacked another row underneath this and added a button with some styling. Everything looks great. So what we're going to do with this button, let me show you. Pull this up. What we're going to do with this button here is we're going to add a modal. All right. And when we click on this button, it's going to bring up this modal here with a name and email capture form and an image. All right. So congratulations. We have wrapped up this video. Let's move on and create the modal for this cool button.